To commemorate, I suppose, his first 100 days back in office, Donald Trump was interviewed by Time magazine, and it was nearly as disastrous as his first 100 days in office. Trump was barely coherent, he was perpetually dishonest, and I think on some level he recognized it was going bad because he freaked out on them towards the end. And then afterwards, he was fact-checked pretty relentlessly about his many, many lies. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, let's take a look at this Time magazine interview with Trump and then the ensuing fact checks. Okay. So, obviously, lots happened. We want to have a conversation about your first 100 days of look like in office, and we want to try to touch on as many different points as we can. Let's see here. Mr. President, I think we're driving at is you've taken congressional authority on trade and appropriations. You fired the heads of independent agencies. You're challenging the courts right now, as you know. You're using the levers of government to weaken private institutions like law firms and universities. Isn't this seizing power away from institutions and concentrating them inside the presidency? Pretty tough question. He says, no, I think what I'm doing exactly what I've campaigned on, which is not mutually exclusive to what they just said. He's so stupid. If you look at what I campaigned on, for instance, you can talk about removing people for our country. We have to do it because Biden allowed them to come through his crazy open border policy insanity. Again, not true. The Biden administration arrested and interdicted people at unprecedented levels. Even if you want to criticize him for his border policy, fair enough. But this idea that they just stepped aside and let people in unlawfully is insane. He allowed people to come into our countries that we can't have in our country. Many criminals, they emptied their prisons. Many countries, almost every country, but not a complete emptying. Just some countries, a complete emptying of the prison system. That's what I mean. That is a sentence by the world's most powerful man. But if you look all over the world, I'm not just talking about South America. We're talking about all over the world. People have been led into our country who are very dangerous. And again, not answering the question, filibustering. So they have to redirect it again. So you're not concentrating more power in the presidency? I don't think so. I'm using it properly, and I'm also using it per my election. You know, everything I'm doing, everything I talked about doing. I said that I'm going to move the criminals out. I saw what was happening early on when he had open borders, because it was a hard thing to believe. I built hundreds of miles of wall, and then he didn't want to. We had another extra 100 miles that we could have put up because I ordered it as an extra. I completed the wall, what I was doing, but I wanted to build additional because it was working so well. Donald Trump did not complete the wall. Trump built a fraction of the wall that he promised. He swore that Mexico would pay for it. That didn't happen either. So again, just perpetual dishonesty, totally full of shit. We'd love to come back to immigration, but maybe start with the economy. Obviously, an issue you campaigned on as well. You promised that you would immediately bring down prices and usher in a golden age of America. The prices of eggs and gas have gone down, but the cost of other things remain. The cost of groceries have gone down. The only thing that hasn't gone down is the price of energy, the cost of energy. I'm sorry, well, energy has gone down. Excuse me. Let me change that. Is the interest rates. And interest rates have essentially stayed the same. So he meant interest rates apparently, but energy. By the way, I'll also note China was really generous there. The price of gas and eggs have gone down, but they skyrocketed initially under Trump. Gas has gone down because global oil markets fear the risk of a global recession, and eggs have been fluctuating, but generally increasing overall under the Trump administration. So I think they're being a bit too charitable there. So, well, let's focus on what's happening right now. We took in billions of dollars. We had no inflation. Okay, well, again, inflation is a consequence of COVID, which Trump is probably too stupid. Now I say he should know that, but maybe he doesn't. Inflation remains pretty much the same, and the IMF is saying it's going to go up. No, Eric, you can't say what they think because so far what I thought is right. I've been right about 401ks are down. The Atlanta Fed, our economy is contracting minus 2.2% during quarter one. Well, they may have said that so far, but I've been right. If you look at the years I've been doing this, I've been right on things. You're gonna have the wealthiest country we've ever had because you're gonna have an explosion upward in the not too distant future. You know, I've been here now for more than 3 months, and I inherited eggs, I inherited groceries, I inherited energy. It was all going through the roof, and we had the highest inflation we've ever had as a country. We're very close to it. Again, not true. Inflation was actually in the downward trajectory under the Biden administration. Under the Biden administration, there was the highest rate of inflation that we'd seen in decades, but that had come down. Trump doesn't know about that or knows about it, but it's too dishonest to acknowledge it. And I believe it was the highest ever. Somebody said it was the highest in only 48 years. Oh, that's more accurate. So this, you see what I'm saying here, where he's contradicting himself. I think it's the highest ever, but maybe it was only in the past 48 years. Oof. Well, let's talk about tariffs. You want companies to build more and make more goods here in America. Not in all cases. There's some products I really don't want to make here. Like t-shirts. I can give you a list because I actually have a list, but if you want, I could give it to you. Well, I mean, the question is, how can CEOs make long-term plans and investments if our tariff policy can change from day to day and still remain so uncertain? How can they make long-term investments? I'll turn it around. How can they make long-term investments if our country is losing $2 trillion a year on trade? Will you consider giving exemptions? No, wait, just so you understand. How can we sustain and how is it sustainable that our country lost almost $2 trillion in trade in the Biden years, in this last year? He's talking again about a trade deficit, which is not a loss of money, right? So a trade deficit is when you are importing more than you're exporting, okay? And there's nothing inherently wrong with that whatsoever. Trump doesn't seem to understand. Well, the CEOs of small businesses are saying they might not be able to last another 2 months given the current tariff regime in place. Will you consider giving small businesses an exemption similar to what you've given to big tech? I'd have to look at individual businesses. Would you consider it? Our country is going to be very rich in a not long period of time. I've been doing this for 3 months, and if you look at the kind of numbers we're taking in and the jobs, if you look at it, more importantly, the companies, the chip companies, the car companies, and Apple. So he's talking about investments which haven't manifested. He famously, the Foxconn thing in his first term, right? He boasted, Foxconn was going to build a huge plant here. It never happened. So they're making commitments to you that they could violate. It's just vapor, right? It is entirely possible. It happened during his first term. If we still have high tariffs, whether it's 20% or 30% or 50% on foreign imports a year from now, will you consider that a victory? Total victory. Why so? Because the country would be making a fortune. Look, that's what China did to us. They charge us 100%. If you look at India, India charges 100 and 150%. If you look at Brazil, if you look at how many countries they charge, that's how they survive. That's how they got rich. Now, zero would be easy. Zero would be easy. But zero, you wouldn't have any companies coming in. They're coming in because they don't want to pay the tariffs. Remember this, there are no tariffs if they make their product here. There are no tariffs if they make their product here. There are no tariffs. This is a tremendous success. You just don't know it yet, but this is a tremendous success, what's happening. Meanwhile, his polling on the economy is cratering. Donald Trump, mimetic TV genius billionaire businessman. That's what he's been pitched as, having the Republican polling perception with respect to the economy. He's enjoyed that too. And now he's underwater on all of this, despite decades worth of polling advantage. And he squandered it all because the American people recognize these tariffs are a disastrous idea. He's even hemorrhaging some support among Republicans who are not happy about this either. Your trade advisor, I'm also chips. Look at Jensen. Just, oh my God. It's just, do you trust them when they say that, Mr. President? These businessmen who will say, I'm going to spend $500 billion? Oh, yeah, I'll tell you why I trust them. First of all, I think they're trustworthy people. But more importantly, they have no choice because they won't be able to pay the tariffs if they don't do it. And they're like, well, no, I understand, Mr. President. Zero. Your trade advisor, Peter Navarro, says 90 deals in 90 days is possible. We're now 13 days into the point where you lifted the discounted reciprocal tariffs. There's 0 deals so far. Why is that? No, there's many deals. Well, when are they going to be announced? You have to understand, I'm dealing with all the companies, very friendly countries. We're meeting with China. We're doing fine with everybody. But ultimately, I've made all the deals. China recently said that there were no negotiations in place, that there was no conversation. It totally contradicted Trump. Trump is saying that the negotiations are ongoing. Now he says, I've made all the deals. Ultimately, I've made all the deals. Not one has been announced yet. When are you going to announce them? I've made 200 deals. Yes, he said that. You made 200 deals? 100%. Can you share with whom? Because the deal is a deal that I choose. View it differently. We're a department store and we set the price. I meet with the companies and then I set a fair price, what I consider to be a fair price, and they can pay it or they don't have to pay it. They don't have to do business with the United States, but I set a tariff on countries. Some have been horrible to us. Some have been okay. Nobody's been great. Everybody took advantage of us. What I'm doing is I will, at a certain point in the not too distant future, I will set a fair price of tariffs for different countries. These countries, some of them have made hundreds of billions of dollars, and some of them have made a lot of money. Very few of them have made nothing because the United States was being ripped off by almost every country in the world, in the entire world. So I will set a price, everything else. For instance, and when I set the price, I will set it fairly according to the statistics, according to everything else. For instance, do they have a VAT system in play? Do they charge us tariffs? How much are they charging us? How much have they been charging us? Many, many different factors, right? How are we being treated by that country? And then I will set a tariff. Are we paying for their military? As an example, we have Korea. We pay billions of dollars for the military. And they're like, I'm just curious. Why don't you announce these deals that you've solidified? I would say over the next 3 to 4 weeks, and we're finished, by the way. You're finished? We'll be finished. So, you'll be finished in 3 to 4 weeks. I'll be finished. Now, some countries may come back and ask for an adjustment, and I'll consider that. But I'll basically be, with great knowledge, setting, ready? We're a department store, a giant department store, the biggest department store in history. Everybody wants to come in and take from us. They're going to come in, they're going to pay a price for taking our treasure, for taking our jobs, all those things. And he just rambles like this. Will you call President Xi if he doesn't call you? No. You won't? Nope. Has he called you yet? Yep. When did he call you? He's called. And I don't think that's a sign of weakness on his behalf. But would you think it's a sign of weakness if you called him? I don't. I just look. Well, what did he say? If people want to, well, look, we all want to make deals. I'm in this giant store. It's a giant, beautiful store, and everybody wants to go shopping there on behalf of the American people. I own the store, and I set the prices, and I'll say, if you want to shop here, this is what you have to pay. The period of uncertainty will be over in 3 to 4 weeks. I don't think there's any uncertainty there. The only thing, they have an option. You don't have to shop here. You can go somewhere else, but there aren't too many places they can go. You understand what I mean, though? Sure. Your Treasury Secretary says the situation with China is unsustainable. Oh, I agree. You mean the way it is now? Yes. Or the way it was before I got here. The current moment, too, he believes is unsustainable. Well, no, they won't do any business here because at 145%, it's going to be very rare that you see business. But your conversations with Xi have made you feel like you're moving towards more productive. Oh, there's a number at which they'll feel comfortable. Yeah, but you can't let them make $1 trillion from us. You can't let them make $750 billion. See, that's not what's really sustainable. When China makes $1 trillion or $1 trillion, when we all have almost $2 trillion worth of what I call loss. Some people don't, but a lot of it's a loss. Mr. President, there was a period of time on April 9th when the bond market was under extreme stress and there was a risk of financial crisis far beyond what the plummeting stock market suggested. I wasn't worried. What did your advisors tell you, though? You were in the Oval Office with Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick. What did they tell you to convince you to lift the reciprocal tariffs for the 90-day pause? They didn't tell me. I did. What made you decide? It wasn't for that reason. It wasn't for the bond market? No, it wasn't for that reason. I'm doing that until we come up with the numbers I want to come up with. I've met with a lot of countries. I've talked on the telephone. I don't even want them to come in. You said the bond market was getting the yips. The bond market was getting the yips, but I wasn't because I know what we have. I know what we have, but I also know we won't have it for long if we're allowed 4 more years of the gross incompetence. This thing is just running. I was running as a free spirit. This was the most incompetent president in history. Okay, what about complying with the Supreme Court? You committed to complying with the Supreme Court in our last interview. I said, what? You committed to complying with Supreme Court orders. Yeah. When you and I spoke last April, are you still committed to complying with all Supreme Court orders? Sure, I believe in the court system. Well, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that you have to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You haven't done so. Are you disobeying the Supreme Court? Well, that's not what my people told me. They didn't say it was, they said it was 9-0 was something entirely different. Let me quote from the ruling. Quote, the order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. Are you facilitating the release? I leave that to my lawyers. I give them no instructions. They feel that the order said something very different from what you're saying, but I leave that to my lawyers. If they want, and that would be the Attorney General of the United States and the people that represent the country. I don't make that decision. Have you asked President Bukele to return him? I haven't. He said he wouldn't. Did you ask him? But I haven't asked him positively, but he said he wouldn't. But if you haven't asked him, then how are you facilitating his release? Oh, because I haven't been asked to ask him by my attorneys. Nobody asked me to ask him that question except you. Oh my God. Do you think he deserves his day in court? I believe that they made him look like a saint. Then we found out about him. He wasn't a saint. He was MS-13. Again, if all of this, and he proceeds to go on about, and in fact, he had it tattooed on his knuckles, MS-13. So Trump, again, is laboring under the impression that the knuckles on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's hand actually have the characters MS-13 on them. What? That was a doctored photo that he shared. It has symbols on there, which some people believe represents MS-13, though gang experts disagree. But Trump seems to believe it's like MS-13. What? That is a doctored photo, dumbass. You fell for your own propaganda. But, Mr. President, whatever he might have done, whatever he might be affiliated with, doesn't he deserve his day in court? Nazi saboteurs who came to our shores during World War II had their day in court. Al-Qaeda terrorists had their day in court. I really tried to give that to my lawyers to determine. That's why I have them. That's not my determination. It's just, but I leave it up to my lawyer. You could bring him back and retry him. And they're like, exactly right. Exactly right. You could fix this by simply bringing him back and going through the legal process. But I leave that decision to the lawyers. At this moment, they just don't want to do that. They say we're in total compliance with the Supreme Court. What about lower courts? Are you committed to complying with lower courts? Sure, all courts. You took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. The Constitution says that the Supreme Court is the ultimate authority once they issue a ruling. If you defy them, aren't you violating your oath? I'm not defying the Supreme Court. I never defied the Supreme Court. I wouldn't do that. I'm a big believer in the Supreme Court and have a lot of respect for the justices. You asked Bukele of El Salvador to build out the CCOT prison to house American citizens. You said you would love to send homegrown criminals there. No, I didn't say that. I said if it were permissible according to law, then I would do that. Well, do you intend to send American citizens to foreign prisons? I would love to do that if it were permissible by the law. We're looking into that. When I have a person, these would be extreme cases. And so he goes on like this. The law doesn't permit you to do that, man. So I'd love to commit murder if like murder were legal, but it's not. So why are you saying that? It's kind of weird, right? Which Americans would you do that to? I would do it to people who hit old ladies over the head with a baseball bat, for people who grab their bicycle. Again, you don't have the legal or constitutional right to send American citizens off to foreign gulags. Do you really want there to be gulags for American citizens in foreign countries? Gulag? You define gulag. Prisons like in the Soviet Union. Look, I see where you're coming from the moment this interview started, and it's fine. I don't mind. I've answered every question that could be answered by mankind or womankind, and I see where you're coming from. Rapid fire. You can't even wait for me to give you the answer. You should let me give the final answer. You asked him to define gulag, and it's like, okay, well, so here's what a gulag is. Oh, look, how dare you? How dare you interrupt me? How dare you interrupt my question with your answer? It's so funny. Oh, my God. Okay, go ahead, sir. No, I'm not. I'm just saying I see where you're coming from, and you're just so wrong. You're so wrong. These are people who've been in jail 20 times. It's again, like, they're still American citizens. You don't have the right to send American citizens to foreign gulags. Sir, on that note, how much are we paying Bukele for holding these prisoners? I don't know. I could get you that information, but we're paying less than we would normally. Just insane. Many of the January 6th you pardoned pled guilty or were convicted of violent crimes as part of the Capitol attack. Days before you pardoned them, J.D. Vance said, of course you wouldn't include those who committed violence. What changed? What changed where? At what moment did you decide to include all the defendants, including ones who committed violent offenses? Because I've watched in Portland and watched in Seattle, and I've watched in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and other places. People do heinous acts far more serious than what took place on January 6th, and nothing happened to those people. Nothing. And I said, what a double standard it is. And we're talking about a very small group of people that, in your definition, most of those people should have been let out a long time ago. There's never been a group of people, maybe with one exception. I won't go into it. One exception as a group, but there's never been a group of people that's been treated so horribly as the January 6th people. When I see peacefully and patriotically, nobody mentions that. When I say go peacefully and patriotically, no one ever mentions that. Nobody mentions the fact that we had the Unselect Committee of Political Scum, the Unselect Committee, horrible people. They destroyed all the evidence. They burned it. They got rid of it. They destroyed it, and they deleted all the evidence. We went in looking for the evidence. They said, I'm sorry, we don't have it anymore. It's been destroyed. If I ever did that, it would be unthinkable, which you two guys would be doing in writing, but nobody wants to talk about it, and you won't write about it. Nobody writes about it. It's unbelievable, right? But people don't get it. I mean, people get it. They get what I'm saying. They obviously believe it because I had a hell of an election. It's so funny. Oh my God, this is insane. They didn't delete that. I mean, we're already 18 minutes in. We're not even at the bottom of this thing. It's just so much insanity. Some Republicans are considering raising taxes on millionaires in the package you're planning to pass. It would extend your 2017 tax cuts. Do you support that idea? Well, I'll tell you, I certainly don't mind having a tax increase, and the only reason I wouldn't support it is because I saw Bush, they said, read my lips, and he lost an election. He would have lost it anyway, but he lost an election. He got peed up pretty good. I would be honored to pay more, but I don't want to be in a position where we lose an election because I was generous, but me as a rich person would not. So he just admits it. Like, yeah, he says, oh, of course I'd love to raise taxes on the rich, but I don't want to lose an election. I don't want to lose an election by doing that. Like, number one, I don't think you would lose an election if you tax the rich because it's a universally popular notion. Now, you might lose support among your donors, but here he's just giving the game away. He says, taking him at face value, hell yeah, I love to raise taxes on the rich. I don't think that's true, but I'm not going to do it because it's bad for me politically. He's just so transparently dishonest and cynical. Oh, let's see. Experts estimate the House Republicans' budget will result in more than $100 billion in losses to Medicaid over the next 10 years. Do you support that? Due to what? The Republican budget that would cut roughly $800 billion from Medicaid. I don't think they're going to cut $800 billion. They're going to look at waste, fraud, and abuse. So would you veto a bill if it had cuts to Medicaid? If it was an increase, if we were deducting something from, I would, but it's waste, fraud, and abuse is what you're looking for. Nobody minds that. Oh, my gosh. So let's see. Keep going here. Do you think corporate monopolies have hurt average Americans? In some cases, yeah. In some cases, no. I'd like to ask you some questions about DOGE. You put Elon Musk in charge of this cost-cutting operation. The question is, why is the government, through DOGE, amassing sensitive personal information about everyday Americans which was previously stored in all agencies and all in one place. DOGE has been a very big success. We found hundreds of billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse, billions of dollars being given to again, just not true at all. The fact checks get into this. Why are you giving DOGE so much of Americans' information? Because we want to find waste, fraud, and abuse, and we want to cut our costs. So insane. Oh my gosh. What does your administration plan to do with information obtained by the IRS and other agencies as part of the DOGE efforts? Well, I don't know about the IRS because I'm not involved in it, but I found tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. Tremendous. Oh gosh. It just keeps going like this. Gosh. This is insanity. It's insanity. You said you would end the war in Ukraine on day one. Well, I said that figuratively, and I said that as an exaggeration because to make a point, and it gets a lot of by the fake news. Obviously, people know what I said. What I said it was in jest, but I also said it would be ended. Well, what's taking so long? When do you think it'll be ended? Well, I don't think it's long. I mean, look, I got here 3 months ago. The war's been going on for 3 years. It's a war that never would have happened if I was president. It's Biden's war. It's not my war. I have nothing to do with it. I would never have had this war. This war would have never happened. Putin would have never done it. This war would have never happened. October 6th would never happen. October 7th would have never happened. What would have never happened, ever? You then say, what's taking so long? Do you hear this, Steve? The war's been waging for 3 years. I just got here, and you say, what's taking so long? Oh, my gosh. Let's see. Do you want to be remembered as a president who expanded American territory? Wouldn't mind. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Yeah, we normally don't cover foreign policy here, so we're slipping through that one. Okay. Are you familiar with the case of the Tufts University student, Raseina Ozturk, who was arrested by a group of plainclothes officers? Well, she has since been accused by your government of having ties to Hamas. They've not revealed any evidence. Would you direct your Department of Justice to disclose evidence that she's connected to Hamas? I would have no trouble with it. No, I'll look into it, but I'm not aware of that particular event. He's just never aware of anything. Like, he's blissfully unaware of what goes on in his government. You were harshly critical of what you call the weaponization of the justice system under Biden. You recently signed memos. Well, sure, but you wouldn't be. If this were Biden, first of all, he wouldn't do the interview because he was grossly incompetent. We spoke to him last year. Huh? We spoke to him a year ago. How'd he do? You can read the interview yourself. Not do good. I did read the interview. He didn't do well. He didn't do well at all. He didn't do well at anything. And he cut that interview off to being a matter of minutes. And you weren't asking him questions like you're asking me. So again, he would never do this interview. We actually did interview him. Huh? So you didn't know he did an interview? Yeah, we spoke to him a year ago. Okay, well, how'd he do? Okay, actually, I do know about the guy is a total contradiction. He just does not know what's going on at all. Well, we do appreciate that you're willing and able to answer these questions. It says something about you. Again, weird, creepy flattering from time that I don't like. I mean, the fact that he is able to speak words incoherently and he's willing to do it to your face, but not answer the question substantively. I don't think he deserves credit for simply saying words in your general direction. You recently signed memos calling for the investigation into Chris Krebs, a top cybersecurity official in your first term. Isn't that, though, what you accused Biden of doing to you? I don't think Chris Krebs was a disgrace. I think Chris Krebs was a disgrace to our country. I think he was. I think he was terrible. By the way, I don't know him. I don't think I ever met him. I probably saw him around. I have people come in like the other one. He came in and he's on CNN all the time like he's an expert on Trump. I have no idea who he is. And Chris Krebs is the same thing. I guess he probably says he knows me, but I have no idea. And oftentimes I'll have some people sitting right here and behind them will be 10 or 15 people from their agency or their office, and they'll stand here. And then all of a sudden I hear that I'm like, that they're experts in me. I know very little about Chris Krebs, but I think he was very deficient. So you know very little about him, but you have very strong opinions about him, such that you have personally signed an order demanding that your DOJ investigate him. Total contradiction there. You've used threats and lawsuits and forms of coercion. Well, I've got to be doing something right because I've had a lot of law firms give me money. Yes, you have successfully extorted. You see what he's saying? It's insane. Why is that an appropriate use of presidential power? Well, I think it's because I think they felt that the election was rigged and stolen. They didn't want to be a part of it. You think they gave me $100 million each for nothing? These law firms gave me $100 million worth of work, et cetera, and other things. Because you threatened them, dumbass, because they're afraid of you, not because they agree with you. So stupid. Is this an appropriate use of presidential power, you think? Which is the threats and EOs against the law firms. They pay, these are the top firms in the world. These are the biggest, the best. Cravath, Milbank, Tweed, Paul Weiss. These are the toughest, smartest firms. They don't do this unless there's a little problem or a big problem. Isn't cutting a deal with them to remove a threat from you and to do pro bono work for you just a form of extortion? I don't think it was a threat. I think they did it because I assumed they did it because they felt they did do something wrong. What? You said you weren't. Oh my God, this is insane. When we spoke to you a year ago, you asked whether you would challenge the 22nd Amendment, which limits presidents to 2 terms. You said, and I quote, "I'm going to serve 1 term, I'm going to do a great job, and I'm going to leave." What changed? Well, I'm serving 2 terms now. You meant 1 in addition to the one you already served. You mean 1 more. I have more people begging me to run again, and I haven't even looked at the possibility. But the only thing that's changed is they think I'm doing a great job, and they like the way I'm running the country. You recently said you were not joking about seeking a 3rd term and that there were methods to do it. What methods? I'd rather not discuss that now. But as you know, there are some loopholes that have been discussed that are well known. I don't believe in loopholes. I don't believe in using loopholes. You wouldn't run as a president to J.D. Vance? I don't know anything about, look, what I can say is I'm being inundated with requests. I'm doing a good job, great physical exam. And unlike every other president, I took the cognitive test and aced it 100%. And I bet you guys couldn't get 100% on that exam. It's a tough exam. You know, when you get into the mid questions, it gets to get pretty tricky and pretty tough. And the last questions are very tough. And I aced it. And I guarantee I'd make a big, beautiful bet that you guys couldn't ace it. But anyway, look, it's good to have you. It's a very nasty interview, but they don't ask any of the good things. Oh my God. It's insane. I guess we'll close on this. One final question. You were showing us new paintings that you have behind us. You put all those new portraits. One of them includes John Adams. And John Adams said we're a government ruled by laws, not by men. Do you agree with that? John Adams said what? Where was that painting? It's right here. We're a government ruled by laws, not by men. Well, I think we're a government ruled by law, but somebody has to administer the law. So therefore, men, certainly men and women, certainly play a role in it. I wouldn't agree with it 100%. We are a government where men are involved in the process of law. And ideally, you're going to have honest men like me. He says, you're going to have honest men like me. This is stunning stuff. And I mean, then he was fact checked to hell and back on this. Again, what Trump said, we're losing $2 trillion on trade. U.S. had a trade deficit with the rest of the world at less than $8 trillion. Trump said many criminals, they emptied their prisons. While Trump has frequently made this claim, there's no evidence that that's true. The Migration Policy Institute, a nonpartisan think tank, is among the groups who research such assertions, and they debunk it. Trump did build hundreds of miles of wall in his first term, most of which has been replaced or supported existing fencing. Okay, the barrier cost taxpayers some $11 billion and was breached by smugglers more than 3,200 times over 3 years, according to a Washington Post report. The prices of groceries have gone down, Trump says, but total food prices increased 3% in March year over year. Trump says we're taking in billions of dollars in tariffs, by the way. U.S. Customs and Border Protection said the U.S. was taking in about $500 million per day in tariff revenue. And of course, these things will eventually be paid in the consumers in terms of increased flight prices. So funny. We had no inflation. Again, not true. Keep debunking oh my God, like just we're scrolling for forever. We have crime rates under Biden that went through the roof. Trump said, unfortunately, those rates have been added by illegal immigrants that he allowed into the country. They fact check it in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic and Trump's last year in office. Violent crime rose sharply. So crime spiked under Donald Trump. They fact checked Trump's claims on the prosecutions regarding the George Floyd protests. The Associated Press reviewed thousands of pages of court documents and hundreds of federal cases. The investigation found that, quote, dozens of people charged have been convicted of serious crimes and sent to prison. The comparison between law enforcement handled the Capitol riots and Floyd protests is flawed. Kent Greenfield, a professor at Boston College Law School, said, quote, these property damage or accusations of arson and looting from the George Floyd protests, those were serious and they were dealt with seriously, but they weren't an attack on the very core constitutional processes that we rely on in a democracy, nor were they an attack on the United States Congress. They fact check him on DOGE. DOGE's website claims this work has saved the U.S. government an estimated $160 billion as of April 20th. However, multiple analyses of DOGE's efforts have found that much of its claims have been overstated. Wall Street Journal analysis from February compared more than 1,100 canceled contracts listed by DOGE to their actual cost during the fiscal year. They found that though the organization claimed to have saved around $7 billion from those contracts, the actual savings look closer to $2.6 billion. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on like this. He just lied his ass off. So yeah, sorry for doing that, but that's one of the worst interviews, maybe even the worst interview I've ever seen Trump conduct, and I think it merits a careful examination. But there you have it. Donald Trump having a meltdown, being barely coherent, lying his ass off, and yeah, it's almost as bad as his actual 100 days. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.